When you start the meeting, they'll, oh, now they're on. Okay. Yeah, and when you're not. We've got just about a minute, and then we'll get started. So you make sure it's, when you're not talking, you should want to make sure it's off. We have caught in some embarrassing situations.
Right up to the thing is, I've been talking to Jason West, if you could share with him, part of it is the education process.
Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a format.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go ahead and do a quick roll call. Douglas Wisdom. Robert Siebert. Robert Smith. William Martin.
Here.
Frederick Swats. Hal Barton.
Here.
Hildy Angus. And Daniel Rodriguez is not present. And in the interest of being able to conduct business, we're going to go ahead and move items number 1 and 2 to this point so that you can elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson. So we will need a motion to elect a chairperson.
I'd like to move that we elect Bob Smith as our chairperson.
And I'll second that motion. I'm sorry.
It's to elect Bob Smith chairman of this commission.
Third.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll need a motion for a vice chairperson.
I move that we elect Rick Swats vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
For clarity, I'm not a voting member of this, right?
Yes, you
I'm a voting member? Oh,
Those opposed? Motion carries. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Oh, thanks. Well, thank you. Thank you all for attending today. And I think the first thing we need to do is go to the call to the public. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Oh, we have Chuck Brinkley.
Howdy, I'm Chuck Brinkley, 5137 Concho Circle, Golden Shores, Topak, Arizona. And I am just here to express my willingness and my desire to serve on the commission. I missed the last meeting, was unaware of the workshop, and anyways, that's what I'm here for. I'd be District 5, and I haven't got any response from emails from Lois, so thank you.
Have you gotten an application filled out? You need to have an application filled out and turned in to,
During the call to public, can't, you can only refer it to staff, or if someone says something personal, you can respond, but other than that, you can't respond,
Okay.
okay?
I stand corrected. Any other calls from the public?
I'm Jim Bowen from Havasu, Buster Johnson's Area 3. I've talked to them, filled out all the paperwork, supposed to be on this, but it was not in time to be on this, so I'll see you next time then.
Thank you. Any other calls from the public? Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the representative,
End the call to public.
okay, end of call to the public. I'm learning.
It's okay.
The representatives from BLM, if they want to come up and give a quick overview of the,
Okay, I'm sorry. We have to follow our agenda. So the next thing on your agenda would be the approval of your November 8.
okay, we'll go to item 3, approval of the minutes of our session the other week on November 8th.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Motion, we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So read this, number 4, and then you can ask them to come up and talk.
Okay, discussion of the state legislature indemnifying the federal government on public use of existing transportation features such as roads, primitive roads, and trails crossing federal lands. And at that point, I would like to ask the BLM representatives.
No. Chairman Smith, if I could intervene, Public Works Director Steve Latosky is here to address that item and would like to speak on behalf of it.
Okay,
It should have been the other way. 5 should have been 4.
we'll get it right next time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith, members of the commission. Steve Latosky, Mojave County Public Works Director. One of the things that we were contemplating in the context of the existing state statute that does represent RS 2477 as it relates to the county the state not providing any relinquishment of those rights-of-ways that are deemed RS 2477 unless the state or its political subdivision, such as the county, takes the appropriate action. If that is somewhat of an influence, if you will, or just in general, the use of BLM managed recreational trails, there may be an opportunity, and this is merely a suggestion, for new legislation that would indemnify the federal government and hence BLM against claims by the public utilizing those recreational trails. When you consider one of the possible concerns on the BLM side as it relates to maintenance of those trails, which most likely largely cannot be accomplished with the existing resources BLM has, by taking some sort of legislative measure that would allow the federal government and BLM and any federal agency managing lands to be indemnified from public claims, that might be an avenue that would best appease certain concerns that BLM has as it relates to their consideration of trail closures. So I just wish to impart that for discussion to the commission.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody have any questions of Steve?
Would you mind explaining that in English so we kind of understand that then?
Absolutely. If it pleases the commission,
Yes.
what we see in front of us is a plethora of recreational trails that are subject to evaluation by BLM. It's possible that one of the concerns or criteria, if you will, that BLM is considering in designating certain trails for closure is the liability concern. Essentially, BLM concerned about the public if there were an accident on one of these trails, filing claim against the BLM in court. And one of the suggestions that I could put out there is new legislation at the state level that would indemnify the federal government, namely BLM, from public claims due to their use of these recreational trails. If such legislation existed, perhaps that would be more grounds for really arguing that the trails stay open almost in their entirety.
Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there any precedent to that, as far as you know?
Chairman Smith, Supervisor Angus, as far as I know, and I've only done a very limited literature review, I have not found any other statutes, state statutes that address this matter. I have seen it reflected in agreements, agency-to-agency agreements, but I have not. But I have also want to say that I have not looked at all the state statutes nationwide.
Okay, that's why one of the things we wanted was to have our state representatives here, and actually a representative from our congressman's office, but unfortunately with the timing of the elections, that was impossible, but it is something that we should put down on paper and ask them about and see what their thoughts are on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ask one more thing. Is there a history of BLM being held responsible for accidents that happen on trails that with people who are doing something they shouldn't do? Do we have a long problem with them actually suing BLM successfully? Maybe that's something I need to ask later.
Exactly. Chairman Smith, Commissioner Swats, I am really not party to that level of information, but it's not uncharacteristic for a government agency that manages a particular right-of-way or roadway to be possibly named in a suit should a member of the public be injured on those.
Is that common in the county?
It does, Commissioner Swats. Yes, it has happened. With county administered rights of ways.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would BLM like to come up and comment on that at this time?
Good afternoon. My name is William Mack. I'm the district manager for the BLM Colorado River District that encompasses Yuma, Kingman, Lake Havasu. Yes, that is something that's common, not only for injuries that happen while out recreating, but also we've received suits concerning burrow injuries between members of the public and wild burrows, for whatever reason that may be, for many other different activities where folks are out using public lands, something happens, have an accident, and the lawsuit comes to the federal government.
What is the agency's liability in that? I mean, have they been successfully sued? I mean, do you pay out?
Well, once that we're not privy to that on the ground level, because that goes to another sector where the legal representatives for the agency handles that, and us on the ground level, we aren't privy to what those outcomes are. So whether they were successful or not, we don't get that information.
Do you know how common they are?
It's very common.
Very common?
I was with BLM Nevada before I came here. I was the manager for the Burning Man event. Oftentimes people come out there and they get killed at the event, and since BLM, not that we host or run the event, but since we permitted the family of those folks that were killed or died of causes when they were at the event, oftentimes sues the federal government, and normally the manager involved name ends up on that lawsuit, which would be myself. So yes, it happens quite frequently.
It's getting a little away from the subject, but can you tell, so you don't know how all the lawsuits come out, I understand that, but can you tell us, if, are people actually, they're blaming the trail itself rather than their own incompetence and
Yes.
trying to go from there?
Yes, well, they're blaming the agency for whatever condition the trail is in, or for whatever happened to cause their accident. The finger normally gets pointed at the government.
Does signage warning people that an area is hazardous, does that seem to influence those lawsuits, or do you know that?
Well, that would get into a deeper discussion, because that's what travel management planning is for, to go out and sign those areas. But if we have to have a plan in place in order to go to Washington and show a viable plan to request funding for all the signage that's needed out on the ground. If we can't complete that plan, then we have to come up with some other type of way to put the signs out. If we can't account for the money, the taxpayers' dollars that are getting spent on the ground with some sort of plan, we don't get funding to go out and sign the area. So there's no way to let the public know that there are hazards out there when we can't put a plan together to get out there and do it.
Okay, thank you.
One comment on most all organized off-road events that I've attended in Nevada, California, and the western states. As a participant, you always sign a disclaimer as part of and that should take care of a lot of the litigation where there would be an accident or whatnot, because you do sign away your life when you sign up to do this.
Well, it depends. I mean, general recreating public don't sign anything. If I'm going to go out on the weekend with my family, I don't have to sign anything to go and do that.
Yeah, I agreed, but you quoted the Burning Man project where there's several 100,000 people.
The individual people don't have to sign anything. It's the promoters or the people conducting the event that has to sign something, and that still doesn't deter the person from suing the agency versus suing the actual proponent.
Okay.
They normally sue the agency first in those events. If, depending on how that situation pans out, if they're unsuccessful in suing the government, then they may go after the proponent that hosts the event. But again, we're not privy to how those things play out.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
Ask the audience if there's anyone who wants to remark on it. Ask anyone in the audience if they want to speak to it.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address this situation?
This one issue.
Just this one issue, yes. No, thank you. Okay, where are we at? 5, 6? 5. Item 5, discussion of the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Land Management H8342 Travel and Transportation Handbook.
Yes, Chairman Smith, again, Public Works Director Steve Letowski is going to address that. And in the handouts that was presented to the commission earlier today is a copy of the information that Mr. Letowski would like to discuss with the commission. It is titled the H8342 Travel Management Handbook.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Chairman Smith, members of the commission. This was brought forward by staff only on the premise of providing some contextual background on what may be more suitable to consider the BLM's as well as the federal government's approach toward even considering whether roadways should be designated as open, restricted, or closed. And what I put forward just for your own information is the Travel and Transportation Handbook that has been adopted, and this is at the at the top federal nationwide level, whereby any BLM travel management plan would be subject to. And it was just worth noting for the Commission's information as we engage in this dialogue on closing recreational trails, that this particular handbook, which should be a steering document, does set forth under the closed designation. It sets forth one, I call it a shall criteria, or if the route does have a fatal flaw, and that would be if it does bisect a congressionally designated wilderness area that by federal statute is closed to motorized or mechanized use. However, the other criteria would be more should criteria. These would be the criteria that in evaluating any recreational trail for closure, we should, as from the public's point of view, should be inquiring about and maybe should be understanding, to a more greater extent, that the closed designation, may be considered that closure to all OH-free use is necessary to protect resources, promote visitor safety, or reduce user conflict. So we see there are three criteria by which, if we could gain an understanding through the travel management plan planning activities, as well as whether or not any of those three criteria apply to the routes that are proposed to be closed, that would lend a little bit greater understanding and a little bit more synergy with the travel management handbook. But at this point, staff hasn't seen it presented in that context for the routes that are proposed as closed. So again, just more an information piece for the commission, but we wanted to look into the background as far as what criteria has BLM adopted at the at their own headquarters agency level, and it really is well spelled out in this travel management plan.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from the public or from the board on that? Sir, if you'll come up, state your name.
John Strong, 801 Thunderbolt, Lake Havasu City. Also, I'm a member of the Havasu Four-Wheelers and also a board member of the Arizona Peace Trail. All I'm going to say as far as with the review, that all of our trails that we have submitted to the BLM have been kept open. The key is that the public has to learn the process of just submitting the track, and the working relationship with the BLM here in Kingman and also in Havasu and in Yuma has been very, very good. Thank you.
Excuse me, so you're saying that you went through this process in Havasu, and was it similar? Were there proposed closures, but that didn't actually get closed, or did it start from a different level?
All of our trails that we've submitted to the BLM are kept open. We might have to modify a couple of small areas, or they need to be educated on why that they should be kept open. Example, some Jeeps like to drive up a wash and go over the obstacles, and some like to drive up on the ridges for the view. The key is the education process between the public and the BLM process. What we've got is an example right here of the Lake Havasu submitting over 108 trails with the BLM this last year, and as far as all of them are kept open.
Well, that's good to know.
Oh, that's good information, because I know when I did a review of the map, some of the Arizona Peace Trail in the Kingman management showed red on it, and we did work with Matt, and I believe we have that corrected, and I imagine you guys corrected on that also.
Yes, all of the changes, I can't speak for the master plan on the Arizona Peace Trail, but there are little segments that are going to be altered. All of our trails, whether it's the Havasu Four-Wheelers or the Arizona Peace Trail, is a living document. If a person comes in and buys that land, it's private land, then it's no longer public. So therefore, you have to drive around it. An example.
Yes, good example. Thank you.
Chairman Smith, if I may, I have a question for him. When you submitted your responses to the BLM for keeping the routes open, did you include justification?
We submitted a track, told them that was the Havasu Four-Wheelers, tract that has been in existence for 25 years. And other than if there's an issue, then we'd go in and sit down and talk to them. And it always resolved in a positive outcome.
I had the opportunity to work with BLM when they had their Kingman plan, and it was well publicized. They went out not only to the general public, but they went out to specifics. They went out to the ranching community and presented these programs and these options, if you will, to them and asked them for input. I've had the opportunity to talk to at least one area rancher who was involved in that, and she told me that she was totally pleased with the way that the Bureau of Land Management had presented it to her. And what she told them was she wanted her roads open, not closed, that she thought the public was her eyes and ears out there. She said that the BLM was very responsive to that. And when I met with Matt Driscoll here in Kingman, and we sat down and went over some maps, and I asked him about concerns that I personally had. And he said, hey, all you got to do is write them up and put them down, and we'll go through them. So everybody I've talked to, that I've personally talked to about this, has said that BLM has went way more than they have in the past, let's put it that way, to try to get input from the public. One thing that I found kind of disturbing was that I heard people, they called me and they said, well, I don't like this. And I said, well, did you contact BLM about it? And they said, no. And I said, well, you have to make that effort, and it's your responsibility. If you disagree with something on this plan, unless they know about it, they're going to go forward with it. So I think that at least in my view, from what I've seen so far, is, it's it's a mountain of documents and stuff, and I know probably each person in here has a different perspective or knowledge about an area that needs to be looked at. But I think that the process itself was pretty fair and open, considering what I've worked with in the past with a lot of government agencies. This is one that I thought that it's a massive project, but I think overall they've done a great job, and I think that if anybody out there has a concern about a particular trail, road, or whatever, they just need to go to BLM. I think it's the public's responsibility to do that, rather than just sit back and say, well, I disagree with it. Well, what do you disagree with? Show us and go with them.
If I may, I don't really want to go into anecdotal evidence about what other people have said. So I don't really want to hear what some rancher said. If you want to bring a rancher in and have them talk, that's fine. As far as trails that they kept open, that's great too, but also I'm aware that they closed a lot of trails. Not the 180 that you submitted, but a lot that were not included in that 180. I've heard from a lot of folks who Wheel and Havasu that they're very unhappy about some of the trails that were closed down there. And this is not new. So, okay, some people have worked well and been successful, but others have not. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're talking about it.
One more thing. I think...
Can I just comment on what he just said? We did submit our trails. We had 37 items that we had to go and clarify, that issues that had to be taken care of. It takes time and work with the BLM, with the public, but it's become successful in all of them. The key is the education process for the public.
Yes, I do agree with you on that, and I see a hand up back there from BLM. If you would want to come up and comment on that, would be fine. But I do agree with what both of these, or all of these gentlemen say. BLM has worked well with us, but we are still concerned. They want to close 1,630 well less than what we've commented on, and limit use to another 800 plus miles. That is the concern, and especially myself, I have a concern when in their travel management document, all of the data that they're basing these closures off was done in 2004, and the off-road community has gone up by over 300% since 2004. So the participation today is a lot more than when they gathered their data back in 2004.
Again, it takes time and education and work with the public in order to keep the trails open. We can only tell you very successful stories with the BLM.
And I thank you, and that's, I think, why we're all here. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is John Strong. I'm a former president of the Havasu Four Wheelers and Run Chair, and also on the Arizona Peace Trail Board.
Mr. Strong, would you consider being a resource or consultant if we have issues and we want to know how, since you've gone through it already, would you consider doing that for us?
Yes, I would, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Smith, if I could add something, I'd like to add the fact is, actually, time has not been on our hand. Because the BLM's TMP was distributed in August. We have brought it to the board, of which the comments were due by the end of September. And that gave us only 30-plus days to review the document and review the 1,600-plus miles of route closures. We did work closely with the BLM, and they did grant a 60-day extension. However, that 60-day extension ends the end of November this month. So really, we don't have a lot of time to go through every single route and give justifications for remaining it open. That's the challenge we have.
Deadlines were made further up in the bureaucracy, not on the local level. We tried to change it. I called myself and talked to the state director. They don't care of what happens here. They just have a timeline and the bureaucracy to follow.
Thank you.
Chairman?
What- I think the gentleman from BLM was, okay. Go
Chairman,
ahead.
can I?
He says-
I just want to clarify one thing, and that is that,
Chairman, if I could just interject real quick. I'm sorry to go back to the agenda. The item we're on is number 5, discussion of the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Land Management H8342 Travel and Transportation Handbook. Really, the discussion is really, that we're talking about right now, is leading into number 7. And this is a great discussion, but it should be coming at 7. So I'd recommend, I think we're done with 5. I would move on to number 6. Let's discuss number 6, and then get to 7. So that way we're really just sticking to that agenda is what I'd recommend we do.
Probably 7 should have been number
5. but-
Yeah, 5 or 1. Okay.
Okay.
'Cause I bet this gentleman will want to talk about number 7, but I'd recommend we just move on, unless somebody wants to talk specifically about the Travel and Transportation Handbook. That's what we're supposed to be
Is that-
talking about.
That's what that's his comment about the.
Is your comment concerning the handbook or more about the travel management plan?
number
sir?
7.
Number
Okay.
7.
Yeah.
Would you wait until we,
Proceed or sit down?
we'll call you back up. How's that
Okay,
sound?
that's
Thank
fair.
you.
Where do we find this, the travel management handbook? That's something we
Is it back up?
Chairman Smith, I think, Amanda, it's on your website as well. And if you want to, after the meeting, I can get your information and we can forward on it to you as well.
Is it on the website in the backup from the agenda? Are we putting the backup? No?
No, I think we did forward on it to all the members of the commission.
Okay, moving on to, unless there's anything more on item 5, we'll move on to item 6, discussion of the ARS 37931, claims of right-of-way under revised statute 2477, and its application to BLM routes considered under the Kingman Travel Management Plan update.
Chairman Smith is Jason Foos, our county surveyor, is going to address the commission with regards to this item.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jason Foos. I am the County Surveyor of Mojave County. I will go through some quick information here regarding RS 2477. Section 8 of the 1866 Mining Act provided for roads as follows: that the right-of-way for construction of highways over public lands not reserved for public uses is hereby granted. That is the statute for RS 2477. It's very, very simple, very plain. That was written in 1866, and it was provided to the public for the purpose of building a country. So it opened up the whole West for anybody to create a right-of-way so that we could develop the West. That law was repealed in 1977. Up to 1977, anything that happened before that may fall under that law. Moving on to Arizona Statute 37931. This is a relatively new statute. I believe it came out in 2016. I may be wrong on that year. But the statute's titled Claims of Right-of-Way under Revised Statute 2477. The state, on behalf of itself and political subdivisions, asserts claims and rights-of-way across public lands under Section 8 of the Mining Act of 1866, reenacted and recodified as Revised Statute 2477, 43 United States Code Section 932, acquired from and after its effective date through October 21st, 1976, the date of its repeal by the authority of the Department of Interior and related agencies Appropriation Act. I'm going to stop reading there. The reference is ARS 37931 for anybody that wants to read that in depth. Basically, the two items I've talked about were the original law that opened up the West for expansion and the creation of highway use rights, and the second piece, the ARS, is apparently our state's assertion of those rights within the appropriate time frames of the creation of those rights.
Thank you. Do we have any comment or question on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think in the original document that BLM gave us, it was stated in there that RS 2477 was not applicable to a travel management plan. Mr. Hessman, you got any comment on that?
No, I disagree. I mean, I don't know exactly what was said in there, but 2477 is a legitimate law. It was a law that was for over 100 years, existed for over 100 years. And really what it's saying is if that law, if that road was created, if it was a highway and the state created that highway, then it will continue to exist. That's how the Arizona Revised Statute solidifies that, said, hey, we are asserting those 2477 roads. The problem is determining whether it is in fact a 2477 right-of-way. Because everybody wants to claim that everything in the whole world is a 2477 right-of-way. That's the golden ticket. If you have a 2477 right-of-way, then great, you got the golden ticket, but we don't always have that. So you have to determine whether it is in fact a 2477 right-of-way. If it is, you can assert it. If you don't have it, though, then you don't have it.
But you disagree with the statement that for the purposes of the travel management plan, that the 2477 is not an appropriate issue to bring up?
No, I think it's an appropriate issue to bring up.
Okay.
Certainly, I do. I think it's something that I would recommend that you assert and say, hey, we have 2477 right-of-ways here, and we want to protect those right-of-ways. Absolutely. But the problem is identifying them.
Yeah, and who's the final authority on whether they are or not?
Well, what you do is you would take a court action. It would be a court action to say, you know, we're going to assert and we're going to quiet title to this right-of-way, and then the court would determine whether it's a 2477 if the parties cannot agree to it.
Has Mojave County ever done anything like that?
I don't know if they filed a court action, but a couple years ago, Lake Havasu asserted 2477 right-of-ways with the BLM, and they were able to work out an agreement to say, yep, that's right, those are 2477 right-of-ways. I don't think they went to court, though, over that, but they did work things out. So, I mean, if the BLM says, yep, we agree with that, then there's no dispute. Okay, that's a 2477. But if not, if they say, no, we don't think that is, but we say it is, then at some point, somebody would have to file a court action. But to my knowledge, we've never filed it. I mean, we have a case where we asserted a 2477 right away, but it wasn't against the BLM. It was against a private party. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on item 6? We'll move on to 7, the discussion of the Kingman Field Office of Bureau Land Management and their travel management plan.
Chairman Smith, members of the commission, the Transportation Master Plan was a document that was emailed out to all the members of the commission. And this is the actual document that is guiding the BLM's direction. This is the document that does state the number of routes that are closed, the miles of it, the percentages of it, and so on. I'd like to add that along with the BLM's Transportation Management Plan, they are doing NEPA on it, and they do have a actual draft environmental assessment that they prepared, and it kind of goes in conjunction. I did not include that with it because this is more just environmental stuff that we really don't need to discuss today. But in terms of the travel management plan, this is the meat. This is what we want to discuss today. This is the items that we need to make the recommendations on to the Board of Supervisors, of which then they would forward it on to the BLM before the closing deadline, the end of this month.
Okay. One comment I have, and I believe it's on page 4 of the travel management plan, one of their bullet points is there's no intention to close existing trails. And they also, the information, as I said earlier, was all gathered in 2004, according to their document, by people on horseback, four-wheel drive, on foot, and so forth. And today's world, in the off-road world, on the BLM land, our public land, as I said earlier, has gone up 300 to 400%. So I don't know that their data is accurate to constitute their closures, and my recommendation is to adopt Plan A until we have better data.
Call BLM. This is the time to call BLM.
Would BLM like to come up and comment on that?
No, not him.
William Mack, District Manager for the BLM Colorado River District. I've heard a lot of talk about everything's closed. There have been no final decisions signed on anything that says anything's closed. Not one.
That's great information.
Well,
I like that.
We haven't made it through the process. So I want to take a moment to first talk about the NEPA process.
Okay.
The NEPA process is something that we are bound to as an agency under FLIPMA, that all interior agencies are. So, like, if we receive a proposal or proposed action from a mining company, the county, a city, whoever, then that's their proposed action. There's nothing we can do to modify or change their proposed action because that's what they are requesting to do. So the NEPA process allows us to go out to the public for comment, and once we receive those comments, we gear our stipulations and how we manage that project based on those comments that come in. It's a little bit different when it's an agency-generated project. So in the NEPA process, you cannot have a proposed action. So what you're looking at was our best start to a proposed action because it's agency generated. That does not mean that that's the end all be all. The whole point of the public comment period is to bring us that information that we know that we don't have. So with the hopes of making a better proposed action across the board that fits everyone, you must understand we are a multiple use agency. We cannot focus on just off-road recreation. We have ranchers, we have miners, we have private landowners, we have hikers, we have horseback riders. All of that stuff has to be taken into account. We have private individuals who have right-of-ways. We have counties that have right-of-ways. We have cities that have right-of-ways. We have companies that have right-of-ways. We have to honor the rights of those documents that we've issued to the public as well. We also have to honor the fact of other recreation activities like hunting And I'm pretty sure in the future, if all of the hunting habitat is fragmented with roads, we'll be right here in this room again talking about why are there no animals to hunt, in the Kingman Field Office. So our best guess was to come up with a happy medium balance as best we could to give a first proposal. That does not mean that proposal is final. The only thing is final is when you get to the point of a final decision. So once we receive all the public comments, we go back, we review those, we incorporate those. Then at the end of that process, you would see a new document reflecting all of those comments that we received. If at that point things are acceptable, we move forward to attempting to get to the final decision phase. So what we proposed was based on that criteria of the BLM Travel Management Manual, which is our guiding document, which was all we had to work off of. We put together the best document we could, working with all the local community as well as the individual groups, the ranching community, as well as our partnering agency, which is Fish and Wildlife Service, Game and Fish. They also had concerns, based on the job that they have to do in areas where they see that habitat is being lost for certain wildlife. So we have to look at the bigger picture of everything and not just one section or segment of things or just from one direction of things. So I know the goal of the group here is focused on four-wheeling and off-roading, but for us, it's bigger than that. If you have an area where you have significant habitat fragmentation and you have a main route there and you have 50 other different routes coming off the main route going to the same exact location, should we lose the habitat and keep 50 routes, or can everybody use one route to get to the same location and keep that habitat so we can keep the wildlife healthy and around? Those are the things that we look at when we're doing that. And we asked the public for their input on that. That was the whole point of asking for public input, because we can't get to a final decision without that. So no final decisions are made, nothing is closed. Our intent for this document ultimately was we haven't had updated maps or anything to share with the public since 1999. So that was one of our main goals, is to get that updated route. The other main goal was, as the gentleman spoke earlier, was we have to have a plan to secure funding in order to maintain and keep the routes and keep them open. We do bear liability when people are traveling on an identified public road and it has washes in it where people can hurt or kill themselves. That is a liability to us. But if we don't have a plan to manage that, to request funding in order to do that, then we're at risk. So we didn't wake up in the morning saying that we're going to go out and close all of the roads. It was our best guess at a plan based on the criteria that we had. That's why the public input was important, so we could adjust the plan, so we could make those changes. We don't know where every route is. We didn't claim to know where every route is. Again, that's where the public comes in and say, hey, you missed these 5 routes here that we often use. And we would come back and say, well, let's map them out, let's GPS them and get them on the map. We're willing to do that. We've done it in every plan that we've worked on. So, we have to follow a process. We have a process that we have to follow. It's been outlined. It came from the Washington level, and we were doing our best to outline it. So that's where we are.
Well, I thank you very much. That's the best explanation to that I've heard so far through this whole process. And I do believe that this commission here, at least by my opinion, we want to encompass all recreation, not just four-wheel drive, not just rock crawling, everybody that's out there using the public land.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. It was a lot more clearer than we've been getting. It would have been nice had you shown up at that school at the map presentation that we had 2.5, 3 months ago. To have that kind of information would have been very helpful for us seeing what was really going on. But what we ended up seeing was, oh, you're closing 30-some-odd% of this area with no real explanation other than, well, if you think a road ought to be changed, all you have to do is submit it. And then we ran into the problem with trying to deal with your computer system in making those comments. There's been a variety of it, but no real understanding of where you're coming from. And that, I think, is basically, it's a matter of communication. One of the commissioners here has also stated, and I felt the same way, why have you not come to us with the roads and saying, we want to close these for this particular reason? And then we can go out to those roads, take a look at them, and make our comments. Trying to cover this entire county, the Kingman field office, the amount of acreage you've got. I mean, we go out every week, sometimes twice a week. We're out in the hills and what have you. We're constantly running. We probably know more about this area than you guys ever dreamed of knowing. But the other side of the coin is you got a job to do, and I appreciate that. But there hasn't been good communication until this moment here. And what I'd like to see, instead of worrying about a deadline, is to sit down and let's narrow out these roads where we can go out there, then make our comment. We can't make a comment about a road from sitting in our desktop computer. We need to go see what you're talking about if there's a real problem. If you're making these closures on the basis of, well, that looks like it ought to get closed and nobody really going to use that. In the last month, we had a lot of rain earlier part of this month, a lot of it. Trails that I went down 2 weeks later were totally different, almost to a point of unusability. And so those extra roads that you've got slated to close because we only need one to get to some certain place, not necessarily true. In a matter of a rainstorm, we need that other road. So, but you may have an environmental issue with the other road or something. Okay, we can understand that, and we'll work around that. But that's a matter of sitting down at a table and talking, and then going out and investigating and coming back and saying, yeah, you're right, or no, we'd like to make this change.
Well, I can say one and the same. It would have been great to come to the office and tell us that, and we could have came up with a plan to do that.
Okay.
We did it with La Paz County. They came in, we sat down with big maps, they requested it, and we drew them all out on the map. It took us about 2 weeks to do it, but we did it. But we they contacted us and we set up a plan. We're open to do that. That's not a problem.
Then
we don't mind. We want to know where the routes are. We need to know where they are. We're not trying to not know where they are, and we're not trying to close anything that people are trying to use. That's not the goal.
Okay.
That's not the plan. That those routes that you're talking about get washed out. It would be good to have those mapped, and so when we need to fix them, so you can continue to use it, to be able to go and say, hey, we need funding to fix this. It got washed out, or better repair it so it stops getting washed out. We don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If we could do that, then you wouldn't have to make new go-arounds. We could keep it maintenance and keep it up to date so it could stay in use. But we have to have a plan to do that. That's just a requirement. We didn't make the rules. That's just what the requirements are. And we're trying to get to that point. We're trying to get there. We're trying to be able to do our part too and keep things open. But we got to have a plan to do that, because the government don't give us money to do those things if we ain't got a plan.
And we need to know the process by which we can get together and sit down on the desk.
Absolutely.
Figure out the maps, and then
absolutely
we can form enough guys to get out there and take a look at this stuff and come back and give you real information.
Absolutely. We would welcome and encourage you to do that. We would love for that to happen. Like I said, we've done it with the other counties, and I don't have a problem with doing it here. That's what we want from the public involvement. We would like to have that.
And who do we contact? You?
Field Manager Amanda Dotson here in Kingman.
Thank you. At the Kingman office?
At the Kingman office.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
comment on it. I know Rick has, but real quickly, Matt Driscoll has been more than happy to work with us on this through the club that I'm with. We spent hours with him getting it, but we never got an answer as to what was going to happen to all of our comments. So this information is very good information. I'm glad you brought it to us. And I think Rick has a comment.
I am. I have to admit I'm a little confused. For years, we had a BLM representative at every club meeting for the 4x4 Club here in Kingman, and same thing happened in Bullhead City and Havasu. And we got closer to this travel management plan within about 2 to 3 years of the travel management plan, and all of a sudden communication with BLM disappeared. It was cut off completely. They never showed up at another meeting, not one. And we sat here, and then all of a sudden we get this thing. Your preferred plan is to close 1,630 miles of trails. Now you talk about working with the clubs. We were working with you. You had somebody come to every one of our meetings. Then you stopped. And then when you stopped, you created this plan. Now, I hope you can see why we're a little suspicious about those circumstances and why we have to suspect that BLM wasn't interested in working with us as club members. I know my club, I did not see a BLM rep at a meeting for almost 3 years, and I went to every single one.
So I can't speak for nobody that was here before me. I've been with the BLM for 25 years, since I was a sophomore in college. I've done this my whole life. I worked in many different states, and I worked on many different projects. I worked all the way up to Washington, D.C. One thing I can tell you is that priorities change, administrations change, and what used to be a top priority is no longer a top priority, and you're not to work on it. The reason I'm standing here today, right now, is based on what we as an agency has went through over the past couple of weeks in dealing with travel management. I'm here today to keep from being told you have to give up, you have to quit, because that's the point where we are right now. I'm here because I think that we can do this. I think we can make it happen. We deserve to give new and updated maps to the public. We deserve for folks to know if there's hazards out on the ground. Folks deserve to know where they're going to recreate. So I'm here to try to keep us from falling off the map again and not talk to you anymore.
Okay. Well, BLM has had an updated map for a good 10 years that they've refused to release to the public for the Wallapai Mountains. They give it to search and rescue and to the county sheriff. I have a copy and I can show you, but you can't buy it from BLM.
Not an official map. We can't get to the official map printing phase without completing the plan. That's for any map. We can share the maps for emergency purposes. They're not official maps. That we can share those, we can share internally generated maps for emergency purposes. If we need to find somebody and it's an emergency, we can share those maps, but they're not official maps. To get it to be an official map, we have to get through the process.
I've been going to that office since about 2004 here in Kingman, asking for an official map of the Wallapai Trails and being told that they're working on it. We are working on it. That's why we're here right now. If we can't get past this point, you won't have one in the future either. Well, we here intend to get past this point, but what we do need is we need actual input. The system that you have set up for public input is woefully inadequate, in my opinion.
That has to be handled on the Washington level. I don't know if you're aware, they just put down new constraints on us as far as time frames to get stuff done under this new administration. The window we have is the window we have. There's no extending the window, so I apologize for that, but that's far beyond my control. That came directly from Washington, D.C. So all of the agency, the whole entire Department of Interior has to abide by these time frames. We would have to go all the way to the Secretary of the Interior to request an extension. So
doesn't intimidate me.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm not
I'm
trying
just
to
telling you, it
intimidate you. I'm
doesn't
trying to
that
educate
doesn't
you. I'm not
intimidate
trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to educate you on the process that we have to go through. It's not our time frames.
Your
We
time
didn't- we
frame,
didn't
your
set
time
it.
frame is your time frame, and I understand that, and I'm not arguing about it. What I am saying is that your preferred plan, it says your preferred option is to close 1,630 miles of trails. I've been denied repeatedly the opportunity to say, I prefer Plan A. I personally have been denied the opportunity to have input that says I prefer Plan A. Now that means that you're not accepting all the comments. And that's okay, and we are here to work with you. That's the point. These gentlemen here on the board,
So
everybody
we
here
could take that comment.
knows these trails.
We could take that comment and we could walk away. I can tell you right now, nothing's going to come of that. Because you have to put input. We have to have input. We can turn with your input the preferred plan into what you want to see with the appropriate input. If you're just telling me you want alternative A, which is the no action alternative, then that's your comment. But if 10,000 other people are saying something different, that's one comment amongst the 10,000. That's
No.
one comment amongst the 10,000 that are saying something different.
When we walk in the door and ask to make a comment and we're told that we can't support Plan A, comments supporting Plan A will not be regarded, then comments supporting Plan A will not be made and will not be considered. And that means that the 10,000 comments for Plan A don't exist. Kind of like some of the trails that we have out here that aren't on your map. And there's the problem too, and that's another problem that I have.
Okay, I think that we've covered that already, and he has admitted that we do have the opportunity now to go back to them and get that information and that inventory added, and they will consider it at that time.
May I say something?
Yes.
Okay, so again, the purpose of this commission was put together very quickly because of the time frame the BLM put. So in the next 2 weeks, this commission has to come up with, even before, actually, it has to be before the next Board of Supervisor meeting, because the board, it's going to be the official comments from the Board of Supervisors. So however you got to do this to get together and do the things that this gentleman is saying you have to do, has to be done really quickly. And it sounds like there's a lot. But I have a couple of questions. Now, the Arizona State Director, Ray Suazo, I've been speaking with him, and he keeps telling me, assuring me, because he knows that we have very, very important concerns about this. He keeps telling me that there's no intention of trails being closed. Is that a correct statement?
That was an absolutely correct statement. I just made the statement earlier. Is again, the purpose of this exercise is not to close trails. You have to understand the trails that were identified to be closed were for a specific purpose. It either came from another proponent, which was one of our sister agencies, it came from a private landowner, or it came from us knowing where we have very, very sensitive habitat and or sensitive cultural resource type areas that we want to remain unlooted and intact, which is part of our jobs too. Those are the only areas that we were focused on.
Okay, so Director Suazo also mentioned that, grazing, and that those ranchers, so when you look at the comments, and what is the hierarchy? Like, whose concerns trumps whose, right? And who makes that decision? So if the ranching community, or ranchers say that they want this closed, and they say, so how is that decided?
Well, there is no trump in it, because what we're trying to prevent is that in situations where we have in a lot of areas where you have a route going to a certain area that you pass through a rancher's allotment or you pass through their private property, and normally they'll leave it open. But if they've requested this and they aren't happy with the outcome, it's not a Trump situation. It's they're going to go and put a fence up and a gate, and you're not going to have access to that area, which they can do that. We're trying to prevent that from happening. We're trying to keep as much open as possible. But again, it's that balance. We are a multiple use agency, not a single use agency. And we have to take all of that into consideration to find a balance, not necessarily what trumps another You know, that's not what we're doing here. We're just trying to make sure that that the concerns of everybody as best that we can are met and taken into consideration.
And I don't envy you. This is a huge task, without a doubt. And so what I'm hearing today is that this is something that you guys have to do for cataloging, mapping,
Yes.
taking into everyone's concerns, and that hopefully these trails will not be closed.
Trails will not be closed.
Well, that's what I think we're here to hear. And so now going forward, okay, I think someone else wants to say something.
But at the same time, you have to understand, again, if we don't have a plan to maintenance the roads, they're just out there for someone to be hurt, where we have the ones that we can't go out and fix or maintain. Again, the ultimate goal is to get to where people can recreate safely. Everybody doesn't have a rock crawler. Everybody's not looking to climb the side of a mountain. So you have to take, an account for the dirt biker, the mountain biker, those folks who don't have that type of equipment. They want to go out and use the trails too. We have to take all of that into consideration.
Okay, when you were working with Havasu and you had a situation like that where you felt it was unsafe, what was the remedy, since what I'm hearing is no trails were closed? I mean, are there remedies with, do you take into consideration doing other things before you close the road, the trail? Okay.
Well, we got roads here in Kingman. I know some of the roads that were originally identified that had mine adits right in the middle, in a blind curve, in the shadow. In the evening, if you're driving down that road, you're not going to see that hole in the middle of the road. So I would hope that as a group, we can all say that, yeah, we probably shouldn't have people traveling on that, especially if folks are going to be out early in the morning or late in the evening, where this could be a problem, where it's a single route and we have a mine addict with a 100-foot drop-off right in the middle of the road. Those are the things that we were trying to look at. And even the closure, or the proposed closure of that, was temporarily till we could get funding to fix it.
Right. And the short period of time for comments is because the time frame was changed on you? Is that what you're saying?
No. So when the new administration came in, our timeframes for NEPA processing got changed.
Okay.
And so it changed for the whole Bureau. It changed for the whole Department of Interior. So it didn't change for the plan. These plans were already underway. So when that change happened, we had to adapt in where we had longer windows planned. Now they became shorter because now we got this kind of chopped up time frame that we got to deal with. We weren't expecting it. We weren't planning on it, but that's what we have to work with. Again, we're open. This is always a priority for our staff because we really want to get this done. I was on the first travel management team for the BLM in 1998, and we're still in the same place we were in 1998 that we are right now, because we can't get past points like this. And again, there's not our intent to close anything. If we got folks out recreating, we got to have maps. Folks got to know where they're going, and we got to do our best as an agency to keep them safe while they're out recreating.
Thank you. I think you had a comment?
Yes, Chairman Smith, members of the commission. I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. What the BLM representatives talk about is they have to do NEPA, which is right here. This is their manual. This is what they have to go by in order to prepare the travel management plan. They have to do it pursuant to NEPA. What I would like to call out is that all your justification for the route closure, as you stated in the past, were based on your analysis and comments from the public, which was included in your NEPA document. But all those comments in the NEPA document that you have here are based on environmental. And I really find that the actual NEPA document, which is required to also look at economic impacts, it really doesn't get into the economic impacts of it, especially when I'm seeing use of data that is dated almost 20 years ago. And I think that that's one thing the commission should be aware of, is that, as I'm, more from the environmental side as well, like yourself and talking to Amanda. But when I look at this document, I think there are some areas that you could have addressed that would address the commission's concerns, the concerns for the amount of routes that they have all these different clubs that do spend considerable amount of money here in Mojave County. And that, the NEPA document really did not address.
So we have a contractor, there was a contractor hired by the state in conjunction with the state, the parks, state parks, to work together on this. And so that contractor is not a BLM employee. So that is a draft document, and yes, it needs a lot of work. But again, we aren't anywhere close to a final stage of that where we're saying that this is the document going out of the door. We don't even have all the public comments yet. So there's no way we can be anywhere close to having a final document to say that this is the end-all, be-all.
Okay, then hearing that, which is excellent, wouldn't it behoove the BLM to not have the closing document submittal period in 3 weeks? Because that's what this commission is faced with. This commission, we put together in literally less than 60 days.
That's a question for the Secretary of the Interior.
And
that's who gave us the new time frames. I cannot change that. I'm willing to work with you however we can work. And, you know, I'm open to that. My folks are open to that. But when you're talking about like we're the one that set the timetable here, that's not something I can go back and change. That's not something I can do. And to get on the Secretary's calendar for a briefing for an extension, the time period will be over by the time that happens. So we're trying to do what we can here locally to address those. And again, we're open and willing to work with you however we can. But you got to understand, we're not the ones here setting these timetables or time frames. It's what we have to go by.
With that understanding, who do we go through as the commission to, and we got an extension for 30 days and then real quickly for an additional 30 days. I mean, you've been working on this for 18 years and you gave us 60 days, well, at first only 3 weeks to comment, now 60 days. I don't think that's a very fair trade.
It used to be 15 days.
Pardon me?
It used to be 15 days.
Yes, sir. I know. I used to deal with BLM in California. So I'm very well aware of that. This is an unprecedented amount. But what, on Hal's comment, how can we proceed forward without making a closure before we start to revise the document?
We're not at the end of this process. Just like in all of the other offices, we've worked far beyond those points because the groups that work with us, like the Havasu four-wheelers, they stayed involved all the time. They were always stopping by the office. They were always in communication. And so we worked together far beyond the comment period to make those things happen. We have an official comment period, but we're not saying that, oh, if you come, you know, a day later, we turning you away. We haven't done that. We don't plan to do that. Again, you know, anybody that's worked with me across the states that I worked in know that that's not how I operate. You know, okay. That's not how my offices operate. You know, we did our best to follow the process that we had, and again, all of this can be amended. I mean, it's a living document. Nothing's etched in stone.
That's great information. I think Rick had one comment here, and then we need to get moving on.
What I'm interested in the possibility that maybe we could develop some sort of intergovernmental agreement that perhaps Mojave County could have a say before you determine that you're going to take any particular piece out there and do anything with it, kind of like we do with planning and zoning now. You come to the Board of Supervisors and you talk to the Board of Supervisors, people say what they have to say, and we could have an open and reasonable process. And as far as inventorying these trails, between the folks sitting here, we can cover about 1,000 miles of trails in a weekend. Mm-hmm. So if we mobilize the people who are involved, we have a tremendous network of off-roaders in this community that I was unaware of until this particular situation came up. There are clubs I never heard of in this county. And if we could work out some sort of an agreement where, you know, if you want to modify or change a trail, maybe you could come to this commission or to the county and you could include this in your travel management plan. There is an intergovernmental agreement. Is this a possibility?
If I could just jump in here real quick, Chairman. It may be a great idea, an intergovernmental agreement, but that's not on the topic today. It's not on the agenda, and we won't be able to discuss it today, but it could be on a future agenda if that's something that you wish to do and stuff, but for now it's not.
I'll make this comment. The NEPA process is open to the whole United States. So if you're looking for an agreement, we got to have an agreement with every single person that walks in the door that said, I want an agreement just like they got. So it doesn't solve the issue, because you may have environmentalist groups come in and want an agreement too, so they can have their voice heard on the decision, and they may be opposite of what you're thinking.
Every county in the United States should have a voice in what the federal government does within their boundaries. I believe that firmly and wholeheartedly.
It's every member of the public.
You know,
every member of the public.
I said this county, not I didn't say.
But I'm saying in order to do that, we would have to open the door to every member of the public for a
What I
similar.
asked you is if we could maybe work out something between the governments, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Apparently
I'd say
we can't talk.
let's move on with the discussion.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
move on.
We'll get
Never
that
mind.
as an agendized item if it comes up in the future. Is there anything more on item 7?
Yeah, I have a question. It's just to clear something up in my mind. Once the travel management plan is finalized, and we're human beings here, and we're going to discover, hey, we forgot such and such a trail that we're always using. I don't know why, but we forgot about it. What is the process for revising that travel management plan once it's completed?
Going into the office, having sit down with the management team at the office, and we can send up a proposal for an amendment to the plan. It's a living document. Again, it's not etched in stone. We know we're not going to see everything. Even with the help of everybody on the ground, we're not going to cover every single thing. We know that. It's a living document. It's built to be relooked at, revised, and made better as the years go on.
Okay, so you're pretty comfortable that if we have these oversights, and we probably will have some oversights, that we can get them remedied relatively easily and relatively quickly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have to go through the process, but we can get a remedy, yes.
Okay.
Chairman Smith, if I could add to that, is let's understand what it's saying here. To go back to amend the travel master plan, it would also, they would have to do NEPA. Once you open NEPA, that's a whole different ballgame.
But the NEPA is only for the trail that's being identified for addition.
And I just kind of wanted to, in response to, you stated you used Logan Simpson as the staff to do the environmental on this. This is the concern here, again, I still have, is that when you look at the list of preparers for NEPA is the document they have to do that's going to prove the master plan, is I can go right down from Logan Simpson, the project manager was an environmental planner. Then you go to the next one, the senior NEPA specialist, environmental planner. Then you have a senior biologist, environmental planner biologist, and archaeologist. There was nothing in terms of having Logan Simpson that they took it in terms of economic and social impacts of Mojave County. Now that as a planner, which I actually am a planner also, is that would be a concern that I'd bring up to the members of the commission and ultimately the Board of Supervisors.
There is a socioeconomic section in every NEPA document. Again, we are not complete. It is our document. It's just like if you hire a roofing contractor to fix your roof, that doesn't mean he owns your house. They are a contractor for us. The document is our document. Our specialists will have final review and buy off on that document before it goes anywhere, before their job is deemed complete. They are just the preparers. They are not the owners of the document. So, I mean, that's just what it is. And they prepare documents for counties also. And I know that for a fact, and I've worked with them a lot. They are a document preparer. They type what we ask them to type, and it is our document. So they're not the ones facilitating the document. They are a hired contractor.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I could rebut it, but I don't want to get in.
Well, I mean, we could rebut it,
Obviously.
or you could, when the time comes to comment, you could send in a whole socioeconomic section and we can add it, and we can bypass that. That's what the public comment period is for. You could write the whole socioeconomic section if you like and submit it as a comment. That's what the comment period is for. That's what the public involvement is for.
Okay, thank you. And we have a couple other comments from the, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
Thank you. Appreciate what you said. I do understand more now than what you did say.
Excuse me, would you
State your
please?
name and address and address the,
Nancy Wisdom, 10175 North Ambush, Kingman, Arizona. And my comment mainly is, I was raised that if a government, police, whatever, says something, that's law. I never argued with him. I'm learning better, but when they came to us at the meeting when we went to the Wallapies, they pretty much said, this is the way it's going to be, guys. And here's this list, that's monster list of roads that are going to close. You tell us why each one shouldn't be. Too overwhelming for the average person. First of all, when I go out, to be honest, I don't know where the heck I am most of the time. So that got confusing. Then we went to the school thing. And they literally, the people working there literally looked me in the eye and said, don't bother voting A. It's no way in hell, literally, is that ever going to go through. It's a waste of your time. So I'm looking at this going, okay, what's the use? I look at the roads. I go, I don't know where half of them are. What's the use? They go, well, get on the internet. Get on the website. I got on the website. I spent hours on the website trying to even locate what and give a reason why. You know, and it's so badly made and so bad, you don't know. So I think there'd have been a lot more comments in that very short period of time they gave us if we could actually have commented. Yes, we could have gone to their office and done that, but admitted, most of us have lives, and we can't spend all our time sitting in the office waiting to be able to talk to them on a road you're not even sure where it's at. You just know that when we go out riding, we don't go, let's go on this road. We go out and go, oh, that looks good. Let's see where that goes. Oh, that's a dead end. We'll turn around. Or we turn around a corner, there's a giant rock. We're not going over that. We back up and back down. And we want to have the right to do that. We don't want to have certain roads that everybody is going on. We don't care if we went on a road not long ago before the rains that was really a cool road and it wasn't really difficult. So a couple weeks later, we invited friends that were relatively new. Let's go on this road. It's no big deal. Then we got down and it was more rocky and we guided them through it, but then we knew. And our friends knew that there's no guarantee. We can turn around. If you don't want to take this, we'll turn around. It's not a problem. And that's how we want the roads to be. We don't expect them all maintained. We don't want them maintained. We don't want everything being smooth and easy going. We could do that on Terry's Road. Thank you.
thank you for your comment. And also, I have heard that from numerous people in the community, especially as regard to the getting on the plan and making comments are very difficult. I've spent literally 100 hours, all of us here at this table have, and that has been one of the problems. But I think he's addressing that here today in hopes that we can move forward to keep what we have.
It's just now the time is up. There, you know, you look at all
I
those
think he
roads.
assured us
How
that
are we
we
going to
do
say
have more
each
time.
road why it should be open? Why can't they? And now he tells us that most of these were chosen for an environmental reason. Now, if they told me that road's closed because elk live on it or because, you know, there's a major thing, it's like, okay, I'm not against having to close a road if there is a specific reason. And I think it's their job to tell us why it should be closed, not our job to gut out every one of those. How many years would it take us all to go on those thousands of miles of roads?
Agreeably.
You know, we can't. So if they have supposedly already looked at them to say why it should be closed, tell us why. None of us are unreasonable, I don't think.
We all agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time this afternoon, and thank you for all serving on this commission. I really appreciate it. I'm Gary Watson, Supervisor for District 1. District 1 encompasses 65% of Mojave County. So I believe I may have a major foot in this battle. But I'd like to make a couple of recommendations, food for thought. Number one is we have a tremendous problem with burros at the moment throughout the Black Mountain Range, and they're having a huge effect on many other indigenous species. So when we're looking at road closures and we're looking at the Black Mountains and eco-sensitive areas, we need to keep in mind that possibly some road alterations might be a good thing up there. So in environmentally delicate areas, take great consideration in that, if you will. But I'd like to offer, for expediency in making your decisions, a couple of ideas that I had, and I had all the maps printed out, the alternatives A, B, C, and D. What I would recommend is you take alternative C or D and work it backwards. Those roads that appear to be in red that you want to keep open, I would recommend that you make comments on those. You've only got 2 weeks to do this, a very short amount of time. And the BLM folks have got a very short amount of time to put their program together also. But in order for you to make sure your voice is heard to the maximum extent, I think it would be helpful for you to pick one of the alternatives and from there make recommendations to the BLM from A, B, C, or D. And that would be my recommendation for the expediency. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Watson. Yes, sir.
Jim Bowen, Lake Havasu, Havasu Four-Wheelers. We have about 450 members. I was president for 3 different times. I've been working on the travel management plan since 2004, okay? The first thing we had to do as a club was understand the process. And the confusion, I think, right here that we're all dealing with today is this phrase of closed, okay? I think the thing we have to realize is when you take a map that's 20 years old, it's going to have routes, it's going to have roads on it. When you take an aerial photograph of today that's 6 months old, it's going to have hundreds of more roads on it, trails, whatever you want to call them. The first thing the BLM asked us for was, which ones do you use? There's thousands of them out here. Tell us which ones you use. And so the first thing we had to do then was go inventory them. You said you didn't get a map of the Wallapies? Here's a great big map of the Wallapies right here from 2010. Okay? They asked us to come up and help them with the inventory. We came up and we helped them with the inventory. We didn't get every single one of them, but we said we use this one, this one, this one, and this one. In the Havasu, that's exactly the same thing that happened. We had to tell them that in certain areas where there are hundreds of roads like this, you take the side-by-sides today, and good Lord, if there's a hill that they haven't been up before, they got to go up it. Well, now, is that a trail? You follow me? And so when you start talking about 2477 and so forth, well, good Lord, those were mostly mining roads and things like that. We're not dealing with that so many times today. We're dealing with trails that have come up in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. So the first thing we had to do was just at least tell them which ones we use. Then we could begin to say, well, now, wait a minute. If there was an issue with one of them in the NEPA process, that's where the negotiation process began to happen then. We wanted, well, can you use this one? This is a great big cultural issue or environmental issue right here. So I guess my point to this group would be this. They're not necessarily trying to close 1,630 miles of trails. This is a great big misnomer. What they're simply saying is, these are all the ones that are out there. Tell us which ones you use. If they don't know that to start with, naturally they're going to think you don't use it. Well, if we don't use it, You follow me? We're right back to that closed thing. As far as representatives coming to our meetings and so forth, they got a lot of things to do. They have always come to our meetings if we ask them to. But they don't automatically show up all the time. You know, here we are, here we are, here we are, and so forth. There are so many clubs out there that if you simply ask them to, they're there.
Mr. Bowen, can I ask you a question? When you worked on your Havasu, how long did you have?
Say again?
When you worked on the Havasu travel management plan, how much time did you have?
For the final comment thing like this? Well, see, I think this is a misnomer also, because when they had that the meeting you're talking about 2 months ago, we went to that thing, and the first thing we looked at the maps up on the easels, and we thought, oh my God, they're going to close all kinds of trails. Well, what they really were trying to say, which was miscommunicated, okay, we've been working on this thing now for 8 or 10 years. Here's your last chance to tell us, are there any other trails you're using? You follow me? And we said, oh, okay. If we looked at it in that framework, then it was entirely different. Here's one we missed, here's one we missed, and so forth like that. How long do we have down there? Good Lord, I don't know. We had 5, 6, 7 years. The comment period on this thing right here has been going on for 6 or 7 years. This is the final thing where they're saying, hey, do you have any more?
How can we have all missed this? How could the county have missed it? How can everyone have missed it?
Well, I would say this. I was talking to Doug earlier. I think one of the main challenges is, how do they go out to every single user and ask them for comments? It's very easy for the clubs, and go to the clubs and we can get them in. Now the challenge is when you have the people coming over for a weekend, how do you get the comments from them?
Well, we're talking about the county. I mean, when were we notified?
Mojave County was first notified as a cooperating agency a year ago, September. At that point in time, you know, they went out, we went to their workshops. However, the workshops that the Bureau of Land Management conducted, one was up here, one was down at Mojave High School, was their trail system did not include any route closures whatsoever. It was not until this document was sent out for public review in August this year that we noted of the proposed route designations of closure. And that's how much time we've had.
And the one question I would ask you is, were they really closed, or had they never been commented and requested to be open?
How would you answer that question? Because I know when I went to the meeting, they had 4 different ideas, A through D, their proposed C, and there was never any input from any member of the BLM in that building that evening as to what the meaning of closed was. They also have 25 definitions for limited. Which one are you going to pick? The document is not adequate, it's flawed, it needs to be cleaned up and have better explanation to the public, us, the people that use the trails.
No, I agree with you. And the trouble is, those maps put out on the easels, I'm not sure what language they were in.
I agree with you there again.
You know, they look like hieroglyphics. And when you're talking about your trails, see, the biggest thing we had to do, first of all, we had to educate a group of our people on how to use GPSs. Then we had to educate them on how to put it in the tracks in GPX format, because that's what we could work with the BLM on.
Agreed.
And the question is, who's here from Bullhead? Bullhead Club, anybody represented? You guys went in and sat down with Matt Driscoll for half a day and went over the map, right?
Yes, we did.
And he went over every one like that, made comments on it and so forth. That's what we have to do. We can't just sit back and say, oh my God, you're closing all those things.
Well, I think that's why we're all
give
here
them
today,
input,
sir.
just like you guys did.
Okay, I have one hand in the back that's been up for quite a while.
Well, hers was, she was up for a long time.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, Supervisor Angus, everybody. My name is Tony Swatz. I'm from Golden Valley. I happen to have contact with a very rabid off-road user who has a lot of opinion. I'm sorry, I'm so short. A lot of opinions about off-road access for trails, but there's something we're not saying, and something that the gentleman from Lake Havasu say, well, all you have to do is take your club in there, and your representative from your club works with the BLM. Well, I have many friends and users who are hikers who would like to drive to the trailhead that they would like to hike on. Prospectors, people who are here recreationally for prospecting that need to get to those remote locations where they're prospecting claims, whatever you call them, places they want to investigate are, and they don't have a club. They don't have a club with 500 members or 1,000 members. This is their club. You guys are so important. And while I really respect what you do, I really do. I actually am a contractor for a government agency. I work for the federal government indirectly, and I have to deal with the regulations, the time frames, and all of these things. I have been wrapped in red tape for almost 2 years working on that contract, and I respect what you do, and I respect the limitations that you have, but I also would really hope that the people who say it's really easy to work with the BLM, all of these people, you're fantastic people. The people I work with are fantastic people, but the regulations still need to be navigated by groups like yours. You're so important to making sure that that hiker that I know that doesn't have a club has access to those trails a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get you. You ready?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, thank you for your patience.
Chuck Brinkley, Golden Shores, Topak. My question is for Mr. Maddox, and I'm trying to understand if I'm following and understanding. So when this official public comment...
You speak into the mic so we can...
When the official public comment period closes, that's not the end of the process. This is when you guys take a look at the comments that have been made, and is there another official time that we come back to the table with this? Or is this just now we start coming to the table, basically? Okay,
Let the record.
That was my question.
Can you come up and answer that to where we can get that to the record?
What it's looking like to me is we need to get this part of the process done so we can get moving into the next part of the process. What is that time frame? Is that just kind of to be determined at this point, or?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Thank you. That's a good question. William Mack. Yes, there is a next step. Yes. So once we get all of the comments in, we sit down. The staff goes through them. They sit down with the contractor, and they go through them to make sure the document reflects the comments, the valuable comments, like the ones we're asking you for. If we get comments that say, oh, we hate everything, we hate the BLM, there's no way for us to analyze that. If we get a comment that say, I only want alternative A, we can analyze that, but when we got more specifics from a gauntlet of other people, then we have to get through that gauntlet of all of those other comments to make sure we capture everything. Once all of that is captured and the maps and the documents reflect that, then we have another review of the document to make sure we captured everything or make sure that things are in line with where we're trying for the document to go. Again, we're not anywhere close to an end-all, be-all point anywhere. We're really in the very beginning stages right here. The draft that you have, and one thing you have to understand, if you wanted to build a mine, when you come in the door, we don't have anything from you. Your company has already generated your plan of operation and everything you need from your side for us to be able to work on our side. When it's an internally generated document, again, the process is a little bit different. So we can't get to that next step without all of the input that we're asking from the public. So if we don't get any input, again, like the gentleman said earlier, we assume that you're okay with what we proposed. But if we get input, then we have to come back to you and say, hey, did we capture this correctly? Are we missing anything? Do we got all the roads on the map, all the trails on the map? But if we don't get to that point and know where all the roads and trails are, then we assume that what we have is fine with everyone. So that's why, again, I go back to the public input is very important.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Anything further on item 7? We'll move on to item 8. That's kind of my item, but it's pretty much been covered under 7 and 6 and 5 and on and on. And the motorized recreation report action plan recommendation that I was going to comment on has had multiple comments already. But the most important one, and he has reiterated on this, keep existing trails open and provide for more off-road vehicle access to BLM areas statewide. And that's in their executive summary, and that's about all I really have to say about number 8. Anybody else have comment on it?
Yeah. This was a workshop plan from January, February, March, something like that, of 2017. I read through it and it's like, wow, these guys got their act together. This is a really good program. We could all work with this. Then we end up in September with some vague, difficult maps to read, and this talk about closures, whether we understood your meaning of closure or our meaning. But I'm almost at this point now, after having heard from you, sir, in regards to what you're trying to do, then all we need is a little bit of time to be able to process that at the local level with guys that are willing to go out, you know, on stuff that you say, we got to close this because of cultural. Well, you know, I don't have a problem with that. You know, I wouldn't want to bust up something that's historic. I don't have a problem with, you know, an environmental issue with, you know, some pucker bush that you want to save. You know, as long as all of a sudden it's just every pucker bush in town, then I got a problem. But, you know, I know where you're coming from. The problem is we haven't had any transparency on this. Today we started getting some transparency. So what I'm looking for is, you know, you had a deadline back in September, then you extended it for 30, then you extended it for another 30. I'd like to see another extension, but now we really got something to work with. Now we know what we're going to do to be able to give you the kind of information you really need. But here we are. A week from now, I'm taking off for a week, Thanksgiving vacation or whatever. You know, it's family time. It's other stuff. So what do I got? 7 days to work on this? Like I got nothing else to do? You know, I need an extension in order to be able to supply Amanda with some real comments. I'm not going to come back at you and say, we only look at 8. We're want to look at what you guys have presented, but unfortunately, it wasn't in a very transparent manner. It wasn't readable.
May I say something? Is there any possibility of getting an extension, and who would we go through? I mean, I know you said the Department of Interior. Do I have to call Ryan Zinke? Or can we go through the state?
So I'm the district manager for this area. I know a lot of folks don't talk to me, and that's fine. But you can best believe anything that go on around here gonna end up right back with me. So if you want to request an extension, that's fine. We can submit it. I can't guarantee it'll happen, but we can submit it. And just like the 180 day when you submit it, we sent that up. But what came back was we'll do 60. We can ask for another extension. Chances are we may get it, we may not. But the bigger picture to look at is, you know, it has to be in line with what everyone else across the nation that's working on TMPs, it has to be in line with the opportunities that they've had as well to do reviews. So if you're looking at a bigger plan in another area and they got it done and finished in the time frame, it's difficult for me to say, oh, we need all this time when an area twice the size of this finished one in the required time frame. And again, I'm not saying that we won't. We will definitely ask for an extension.
Right, there were a lot of roadblocks, not on purpose, we understand that. It's just there was a lot of misunderstanding, miscommunication.
Got it.
I wish we had done this 2 months ago, and again, I want to thank everybody. I mean, I knew nothing until Rick Swans said something, so that brought us here in a remarkably short time. So you see that this group can act quickly. So if there is an extension, they will use the time very wisely. I know that. So if I can assist you or help you in any way like that. So do you want to, Ryan, can this make some kind of motion to ask? Is that anywhere on the agenda?
Is there any way that we can, is there any way we can hold another meeting? Let me back up. What needs to be given to the Board of Supervisors and what time frame? What's the deadline? What are the deadlines?
Supervisor Angus, all you need to do is just submit me a letter requesting an extension, and I'll go through the process.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah, just submit me.
However, I think your question's right. Because right now, we're still in the timeline that has been presented, so you guys have to meet again to give it to the Board of Supervisor. Our meeting, and I don't even know if the time is going to...
Chairman Smith, Attorney Esplin, in order for it to go on the board agenda for the 19th, I would have to have an item no later than the Thursday prior before 5 o'clock.
That's this Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Oh, next Thursday.
Well, actually Wednesday, because Thursday I'm not coming to work.
Okay. A week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
Week from
Yeah, so
yesterday.
next Wednesday by 5 o'clock. Otherwise, we will not be able to put something on the board agenda.
So does this commission or again, I don't understand the legality. I mean, they have to go to and meet with, or the recommendations is something you can do without speaking to BLM, or do you still need to go to BLM to get information? I mean, how do you see this going? I know we need time. We'll do that.
Can we meet one more time before that Thursday deadline? Can we meet, Wednesday deadline? I looked at your bylaws, and your bylaws say you can call a special meeting. Everybody's here. We can call a special meeting for next Tuesday, if you could do that, or Wednesday morning, get it done, and then be able to submit it to the clerk of the board. We could try to do that. I don't think you guys are ready to vote today, are you?
No. There's
Exactly.
nothing to vote on.
Yeah.
Well, my recommendation would be, since we are on these very tight time frames as an agency, and we're already coming to the end of the extension period, the sooner the better for us to start the discussion of receiving the extension, because we don't want to wait till the comment period is over and trying to go back after the fact and say, well, we need another extension. So if you can just get me, it can be an email,
Okay.
Just something saying that at this time we're requesting additional extension. I can't guarantee what that window will be.
Totally understand.
We can send the request in.
Ryan, do we have to do that as a board? I mean, I don't know if I, as a supervisor, have that authority to speak on behalf of this board.
I'd rather go through to the Board of Supervisors. Hal has something real quick, I think, to add.
I just want to, thank you, Ryan, Chairman Smith. Let's just remember, you got to hear what he's saying, is that this would be taken as a recommendation request for an extension, but it's not guaranteed. So what happens then if the extension is denied? Then we've lost the opportunity as a commission to submit the comments.
We still have to meet.
No.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Right.
I reiterate, we are here to work with you. We are not here to work against you. This is not something we are trying to do to cause everybody pain and hardship in their lives. Again, there is a large other group of people out there who have some sort of agreement in what we've proposed. Again, we have to take all of that into account. So we're here to work with you. You just got to be willing to work with us. And I know that holidays and all of that is coming up. we're still here to work with you as much and as best that we can, even if it's, kind of outside of that. We're still here to work with you. I don't think we've ever stopped working on anything just because we passed a date. We've never given up on anything because we missed a date. So all I'm saying is we're here to work with you. We're here to work with everybody involved, every member of the public, because this is important. The travel management is important because what will happen if we don't make it past this point is it'll be 2040 before we talk about this again. And the maps will be really, really old then. And it may be a different administration in office who, sees things a little bit differently. So we have an opportunity to do something and do something great that set a foundation for future years to come. There may be a manager come after me that may not like that or may not want to see that. That may be a manager come after FM Dotson who has a different viewpoint. It happens. I'm saying right now you have folks here that are willing to work with you, and we're trying to do the best we can within the time frame that we have to do things. Again, our goal is not to close anything, but we are a land management agency, and managing the travel on public lands is a part of that because we have to consider the other multiple uses that are out there. That's our job. That's what we have to do. So we're here to work with you. And
the only thing, again, it's just time.
Yeah.
That we want to work. I think we understand things a lot better today. Unfortunately, that you're talking about 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks, 10 days, because we just got to go to the Board of Supervisors. So we're just trying to figure out logistics. So Ryan, could we do something under item 10? Recommendations. So is that an actionable item? Can we then make the recommendation that the Board of Supervisor do a formal letter requesting more time, and maybe we can get a special meeting to, and of course everything goes on still. You still guys got to meet and do everything, but I'm just trying to get this letter, a formal letter from the BOS.
We don't want to try to meet again?
Yeah, no, I'm saying yes.
Well, why can't we
But
meet
I
again
would-
and put it on the next agenda? Put it on the next agenda to say that's what we want to do.
Well,
We
it
can
just,
spell it out exactly what we want to do.
well, I never thought we wouldn't meet again. I'm just trying to get the letter as soon as possible. That would help you
I know,
to get
but-
it as soon as possible.
We can, but the board of supervisors still has to vote on it, right?
Right, I'm saying we can
So-
do a special meeting on it.
I know. So we'll schedule a special meeting for the specific purpose to do exactly what you wanted to do and anything else that you want to do, so we can spell it out on the agenda what action we want to take. I don't think we need to do it today, is what I'm trying to say. If you're going to hold another meeting, a special meeting, then I recommend that's what you put on the agenda to do.
Well, but what I'm saying is, but that's going to put us behind the 8 ball. I mean, we're still going to do it, but we got to know if we're going to have, how long do you think it would take to get an answer? So we should act like we're not going to get it, right? And go forward and do the best job in the limited time. All right, I guess that's the best.
you can do that, but we'll push hard to try and get it. We'll push hard to try and get it. It's just that if you say we need 80 more days, I'm just saying I can't guarantee it's going to come back 80 days. It may come back 30 days, or it may come back 45 days. That's what I'm saying. I can't guarantee that time frame that'll get approved, but we'll push it forward.
Well, I don't think Supervisor Engers is asking for any guarantee, but we're just bound by the open meeting laws on how often we can get together, and we have to notify the public of what we're doing here as a governing body also. So that's kind of we're trying to keep that time frame right down to the niche.
Excuse me, you only need a 24-hour notice to the public to hold a meeting.
Okay.
So just for an example, that on Monday, if somebody says, hey, let's have a meeting on Wednesday, as long as that's posted for 24 hours to the public, you can hold a meeting. So essentially, if you guys did want to meet again next week, we can get that done. We can get an
twice.
agenda.
You can meet twice
As
if we
long as there's enough time to put an
24
agenda
hours.
together and get it posted for 24 hours, business hours.
Yes, thank you. We will proceed with that further in the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Smith, I'd like to add, Supervisor Angus, the BLM has been extremely workable with this. As part of Mojave County, we are a cooperating agency with them. They've been very generous. I've gone to several meetings at their office. And the extension still is a concern because they still have to adhere to NEPA. NEPA itself is very strict. And so they have to understand they're going to be working with the NEPA process. And so there's no guarantees that an extension could be granted.
I understand.
And I want to just reassure that with this commission.
Right. Like I said, we got to go forward like it's a hard deadline, but still, we want to make the request.
Understand that completely. Anything further on that?
No.
Okay. Move on to item 9. And what we received on item 9 was a letter. It's not dated. It was received at our last information meeting. Do I read this now?
Do we have to read it no, just accept it.
It was just, we need to have a motion to accept it as the commission received it. Everybody got a copy of it in the last packet. It was addressed to us from Keith Dennis from Havasu.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we accept the letter by Keith Dennis into the record.
I second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 10, BLM's Transportation Master Plan comments and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors.
Chairman Smith, it sounds like we're going to meet again.
I think that covers item.
And that would cover
And
item 10.
Very good. At this time, let's set a date for a future meeting.
I'd like to, before we set the date or whatever, add that I'd like to talk about an intergovernmental agreement of some sort between the county and BLM so that we can see that the county has a significant say in decisions made regarding transportation.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but that is not agendized for this meeting. We cannot talk about an intergovernmental agreement.
What I'm saying is I want to add it to the next agenda.
You can do that. The board, individual members can ask this something to be included to the agenda. What you'll need to do is talk to Mr. Hal Burton about Barton. Is it, how are you putting it together? Or somebody else? Whoever it is that's putting together the agenda.
Yeah, he can get it to me and I'll ensure it's on it.
Okay, I just want to see it on the agenda, that's all.
Yeah, by my understanding, any one of us, by sending an email to Hal or Jenny, we can get things on the agenda for the upcoming meetings. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So when do you want to set the meeting?
The only thing, Commissioner Chairman Smith, let's just realize we still have to have it in time for the posting requirements.
Yes, understand. Thank you.
Okay. So what day?
What's good for you?
Next week? Anything in the beginning of the week. I'm just in Phoenix the 15th and 16th, but you could.
Keep in mind that Monday is a holiday. We don't have staff here on Monday.
A holiday?
It's the
Oh, it's
observation of
Veterans
Veterans
Day,
Day.
yes.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we have a meeting for Tuesday at 10:30 a.m.? No?
I think we have to.
Has to be 2:30?
I don't know. I don't know.
Tuesdays, I think.
Is that doable?
It is doable, but due to the holiday on Monday, we would have to have something posted, you know, like if you're going to say 10:30 on Tuesday, we have to be posted by 10:30 on Friday. So if you guys have ideas to go on the agenda, they would have to be submitted fairly quickly.
What if I amend that to Wednesday at 2:30? Does that work better? That gives us one more extra day.
And so the process, if you vote on anything on Wednesday, so you put it on the agenda, you take action on it, you say this is what we want to do, then we're going to immediately have to prepare a board action form and submit it to the clerk of the board right then, because she needs to have it done by 5 o'clock on Wednesday. So
We can make that happen, one way or another. We'll figure it out.
And before Wednesday, I advise all the members of this commission to do their homework. I mean, you can't work together
Understand.
But you can do it on your own. So on Wednesday, we'll be able to actually you're going to have to make the comments. I mean, that's the time frame we're under. So everyone's going to have to do what they have to do to have their voice heard, and hopefully we'll get an extension. If not, just to be clear, so after that deadline closes, there'll be another opportunity when at the next level.
Yes, once we get the final draft, once we make it through this comment period, it'll go out, the document will go out. At that point, it'll be at the final review phase, and then that's another comment period that you can say, well, we missed this or we missed that. It's another chance to provide comments, and it won't be a chance to edit the whole document like where we are now, but it'll be chances to make adjustments and corrections and additions if we miss something.
That's great, and that takes a little pressure off, right?
Agreed.
But again, just so you hear me clearly, I'm willing to push to get an
Yeah.
extension if I get the document and we can push it forward, so.
Two is your maximum. 2 is the maximum that can get together.
Yeah, 2 of you can go together. Amanda, is the office, I know, first of all, I want to thank you guys. I know you were supposed to be somewhere else today. Director Suazo told me that, and I appreciate, because he understood how important this was for us, and so I appreciate you changing your plans for us. Are you going to be at the office tomorrow? Is anyone going to be at the office where if a couple, they can't all come together, but if 1 or 2 of them come, that they'll be able to meet there? Or you guys can call and make individual time setups? Does that sound all right?
I know we got to keep this legal, but I would just like to meet with Amanda with the opportunity to be able to work out some kind of a plan to go figure out what these trails are.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
Do that individually.
Yeah,
Individual. Okay.
Up to 2.
yeah. Well, that's what the next meeting is, the meeting where we have to come up with the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay, I think we have a motion on the floor for an emergency meeting next Wednesday at 2:30. Do we have a second? Second? 2:30? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other comments from any members of the commission?
Again, want to thank everyone. I want to thank the commission members. I want to thank Ginny and Hal and Steve Latosky, Supervisor Watson, BLM. You were right there. Director Suazo's been on top of it too. And I personally want to thank you for how quickly and how responsive you've been. I do think a lot of this was some misunderstandings and just the nature of this process, which we understand, anyone who's worked with government, just the timelines and the bureaucracy of it. So I thank you so much for coming here today and answering all our questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Angus, and I agree with everything she just said. I thank each and every one of you and you members from the public for attending and showing your interest. And if there's nothing further, I would like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.